deep in the rugged mountains of California, hidden among jagged peaks and endless desert. There once stood a booming silver mining town called Cerro Gordo. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, it was a place of dreams and fortune. Thousands of miners poured in, silver or flowed out by the ton. Saloons rang with laughter and piano music. The town had hotels, schools, a general store, and even its own tramway system that carried or down the steep mountain slopes. At its peak, Cerro Gordo was one of the most productive silver mines in America, fueling the growth of Los Angeles and feeding the hunger of a young nation. Then, almost overnight, it died. By the 1920s, the rich silver veins ran dry. The price of silver crashed. One by one, the miners packed up and left. Buildings were abandoned where they stood. The tramway fell silent. The once bustling streets became empty corridors of dust and decay. For nearly a century, Cerro Gordo sat frozen in time, a true ghost town, forgotten by the world. The wooden structures weathered and warped under the brutal desert sun. Rattlesnakes made homes in the old saloons. The wind howled through broken windows. Most people who knew about it simply called it worthless. Nothing but a pile of old rotting wood and dangerous holes in the ground, locals would say. Who would want to live up there anyway? By the early 2000s, the town was almost completely forgotten. Occasional adventurous hikers or urban explorers would make the treacherous drive up the steep, winding dirt road, take a few photos, and leave. No one stayed. No one invested. The general opinion was clear. Cerro Gordo was a lost cause, a worthless ghost mining town with no future. But in 2018, something extraordinary happened. A man named Brent Underwood decided to do what no one else would. Brent was in his early 30s, a quiet, determined entrepreneur with short dark hair, a light beard, and a kind of steady gaze that came from someone who had already built and sold successful businesses. He wasn't a miner. He wasn't from the area. He had no deep connection to Cerro Gordo. Yet when he first visited the ghost town during a casual road trip, something clicked inside him. While others saw decay and danger, Brent saw hidden potential. He saw solid stone and wooden buildings that had survived over 150 years of harsh desert conditions. He saw a location with dramatic natural beauty, sweeping mountain views, clear star-filled skies, and a sense of untouched history. Most importantly, he saw an opportunity to do something truly different. Not just preserve a ghost town, but bring it back to life as a living, breathing place. When Brent announced his plan to buy the entire town, all 22 acres, including the mine shafts, buildings, and even the old tramway ruins, people laughed. They called him crazy. News articles ran headlines like, "Man buys ghost town. What could go wrong?" Friends warned him he was throwing away his money on a worthless pile of rubble. Real estate experts told him there was no market for a remote ghost town 8,000 feet up a mountain with no reliable water, electricity, or cell service. You'll lose everything. They said, it's a money pit. But Brent didn't listen to the noise. In 2018, he made the boldest decision of his life. He used his savings and some investor backing to purchase the entire ghost town of Cerro Gordo for a reported $1.4 million. The moment the papers were signed, he became the sole owner of one of America's most famous abandoned mining towns. The first time he moved in, the reality hit hard. Brent Underwood stood alone in the middle of the dusty main street. The wind whipped around the old American Hotel, one of the few surviving structures. Boards creaked. Dust stung his eyes. There was no electricity, no running water, and no neighbors for miles. At night, the temperature dropped dramatically, and the silence was absolute, broken only by the occasional howl of coyotes. He slept in a sleeping bag on the floor of the old hotel, using a headlamp to navigate the dark rooms. During the day, he began the immense task of cleaning, securing, and assessing every building. He documented collapsed roofs, dangerous mine shafts, and years of vandalism. The work was backbreaking and lonely. Locals in the nearby valley towns shook their heads. That city boy is going to regret this, they said. He'll last 6 months at most before he sells it off or goes broke. But Brent had a vision that went far beyond simple preservation. He wanted to revive Cerro Gordo not as a static museum, but as a living destination, a place where people could stay, experience history, and even work remotely in one of the most unique settings on Earth. As the first few months passed, the challenges piled up. Winter brought heavy snow and freezing winds that made the mountain road nearly impassable. Summer brought extreme heat and flash floods. There were constant repairs needed just to make the building safe. Money flowed out faster than expected. Yet every evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in fiery orange and purple, Brent would stand on the porch of the American Hotel, looking out over his town. In those quiet moments, despite all the doubts surrounding him, he felt something powerful. This wasn't just a real estate deal. This was a chance to breathe new life into a place everyone had written off as dead, a place with a rich history that deserved a second chapter. And Brent Underwood was determined to write it. The first 2 years were pure survival. Brent Underwood, early 30s entrepreneur, short dark hair, light beard, steady thoughtful eyes, average build, usually wearing a simple dark t-shirt, work jacket, jeans, and sturdy hiking boots, lived alone on a mountain like a modern pioneer. He woke up every morning before sunrise in the freezing American Hotel. No electricity, no running water. He hauled water up the mountain in jerry cans, cooked on a portable stove, and used a generator that often failed during storms. The physical work was exhausting and never-ending. He spent months clearing decades of debris from the buildings, broken glass, collapsed ceilings, old mining equipment, and animal waste. He patched roofs with whatever materials he could bring up the treacherous dirt road. He boarded up dangerous mine shafts to make the town safe. Every single task took 3 times longer than it should because of the remote location and harsh weather. People who drove up to visit, the few who dared, looked at him with pity. He's living like a hermit up there, they whispered in the valley towns below. That ghost town is going to break him. Financially, it was brutal. Repairs ate through his savings rapidly. Unexpected problems appeared constantly. A collapsed wall here, a leaking roof there, a sudden snowstorm that cut off access for weeks. Investors who had initially shown interest started pulling back. The media continued to call it a crazy stunt. Brent faced moments of deep doubt, sitting alone at night under the vast desert sky, wondering if everyone was right. Yet he refused to quit. Instead of giving up, Brent began sharing his journey openly. He started posting photos and videos on social media from the ghost town, raw, unfiltered images of the harsh conditions, the beautiful sunsets, and the slow progress he was making. To everyone's surprise, people became fascinated. Followers grew. Comments poured in. This is insane, but I can't stop watching. Some even offered to help. The first real turning point came when a small group of adventurous friends volunteered to spend a weekend helping him. Together, they cleared out one entire building and made it barely habitable. That small victory gave Brent renewed energy. Slowly, the town began to show signs of life. Brent focused on making Cerro Gordo functional again. He installed solar panels for basic electricity. He repaired the old water system. He created simple but comfortable guest rooms in the American Hotel using vintage furniture he salvaged and restored. His vision was clear. Turn the ghost town into a unique destination where people could stay overnight, experience true isolation, and connect with history in a way no museum could offer. By the 3rd year, the first paying guests started arriving. They were a mix of curious travelers, history buff photographers, and even digital nomads looking for an extreme remote work experience. Guests had to sign waivers acknowledging the harsh conditions, no Wi-Fi in most areas, limited hot water, and a very bumpy ride up the mountain. Yet they came anyway, drawn by the authenticity and the story of one man trying to revive a dead town. Brent personally greeted every guest in his simple dark t-shirt, work jacket, jeans, and sturdy hiking boots. He gave them tours of the town, sharing stories of the old mining days while showing the work he had done with his own hands. Guests were amazed. Many left reviews saying it was one of the most unique experiences of their lives, sleeping in a real 1800s hotel, waking up to sweeping mountain views, and feeling like they had stepped back in time. Word spread quickly online. Social media posts with hashtags like #GhostTownLiving and #Cerro Gordo Revival started gaining traction. Influencers and YouTubers began making the difficult journey up the mountain to film their stays. The attention brought both opportunity and new challenges. With more visitors came more responsibility. Brent had to improve safety, add basic amenities, and manage logistics for food and supplies. He hired a small crew of locals from the valley to help with maintenance and guiding. Money was still tight, but for the first time, revenue from guest stays started covering some of the repair costs. Not everyone was happy with the revival. Some traditional historians criticized Brent, saying he was commercializing a historic site. A few locals in the valley worried about increased traffic on the dangerous mountain road. There were even moments when vandals tried to damage the property, forcing Brent to install security cameras powered by a solar system. Through every obstacle, Brent stayed calm and focused. He worked from sunrise to sunset, fixing, cleaning, hosting guests, and constantly planning the next improvement. In the evenings, he would sit on the porch of the American Hotel, looking out over the silent streets that were slowly coming back to life, the stars brighter than anywhere else in California. The town was no longer completely dead. There was electricity in some buildings. There were voices and laughter again. There were people staying overnight in rooms that had been empty for over a century. Brent Underwood had moved into a worthless ghost mining town when everyone told him it was impossible. He was now slowly proving them wrong. But the biggest transformation was still ahead. The question remained, could one man's stubborn vision turn this remote, harsh ghost town into something sustainable and truly special? Or would the mountain eventually win? By the 5th year, what the world had dismissed as Brent Underwood's foolish dream had become something remarkable. The ghost mining town of Cerro Gordo was no longer a silent ruin. It was slowly, steadily, and beautifully coming back to life. Brent Underwood, early 30s entrepreneur, short dark hair, light beard, steady thoughtful eyes, average build, usually wearing a simple dark t-shirt, work jacket, jeans, and sturdy hiking boots, stood on the porch of the restored American Hotel as the sun rose over the mountains. The light painted the old wooden buildings in warm golden hues. For the first time in over a century, the sound of human activity filled the dusty streets. Laughter, footsteps, and the occasional generator hum mixed with the wind. What began as one man sleeping on the floor had grown into a functioning, albeit rustic, destination. The American Hotel now had several comfortable guest rooms with restored vintage furniture, solar-powered lights, and basic modern comforts. Other historic buildings had been stabilized and turned into unique spaces. One became a small museum showcasing original mining artifacts. Another served as a communal gathering area where guests shared meals and stories around a fire pit under the vast desert sky. The old tramway ruins had been made safe for guided tours, allowing visitors to experience the engineering marvel that once carried silver down the mountain. The revival went far beyond tourism. Brent had carefully invited a small number of artists, writers, and remote workers to stay for longer periods. These resident creators brought new energy to the town. They painted, wrote, filmed, and even started small projects that celebrated Cerro Gordo's history. Social media had turned the ghost town into an internet sensation. Posts with millions of views showed dramatic mountain sunsets, star-filled nights, and the raw beauty of living in a real 19th century mining town. Bookings skyrocketed. People from all over the world began making the long, bumpy journey up the mountain. Some came for one night. Others stayed for weeks. They left reviews calling it the most unique place on earth and a living piece of American history. Revenue from stays, tours, and merchandise started covering all operating costs and allowed Brent to invest in further restorations. The town that everyone called worthless was now generating real income. Of course, the road to success was never smooth. There were still major challenges. A harsh winter once cut off access for nearly a month, forcing Brent and his small team to rely on stored supplies. A flash flood damaged part of the road. Skeptics continued to criticize, saying the revival was unsustainable or that too many visitors might damage the historic site. Brent addressed every concern with transparency. He shared detailed updates, safety improvements, and his long-term plans to protect the town while keeping its authentic character. Instead of fighting critics, he won them over with results. Local communities in the valley below began to see the benefits. The increased visitors brought business to nearby towns for supplies, fuel, and services. Some young people who had left the area years ago started returning because there were now opportunities connected to Cerro Gordo. The revival created a small but meaningful economic ripple effect across the region. As the years passed, Brent's vision matured. He established clear rules to preserve the town's soul, limited daily visitors, strict environmental protections, and a focus on education rather than mass tourism. He partnered with historians and archaeologists to properly document and protect the mine shafts. He even began planning for solar and wind energy systems that could make the town more self-sufficient. One clear autumn evening, Brent stood alone on the highest point of the town, looking down at the lights flickering in the restored buildings. Guests were gathered around a bonfire, sharing stories. The stars above were impossibly bright. In that moment, the full weight of what he had accomplished hit him. He had moved into a worthless ghost mining town when everyone told him it was impossible. He had faced loneliness, financial stress, harsh weather, and constant doubt. And yet, through patience, hard work, and unwavering belief, he had brought an entire town back to life. Cerro Gordo was no longer just a ghost town on old maps. It had become a symbol of resilience, a place where history and the present met, a destination that reminded people that some things are worth saving, even when the whole world says they are worthless. Brent never sought fame, but his story inspired thousands. Documentaries were made, books were written. Most importantly, a new generation began to believe that abandoned places, whether old towns, factories, or harbors, could find new life if someone was willing to move in and fight for them. As the camera slowly pulls back in a sweeping aerial shot at golden hour, we see the full transformation. The restored wooden building standing proudly against a dramatic mountain backdrop, small groups of visitors walking the streets, solar panels glinting in the sun, and one man in a simple work jacket standing quietly at the center of it all. Brent Underwood had proven something profound. Sometimes the most worthless-looking places hold the greatest potential. Sometimes all it takes is one person crazy enough to move in when everyone else moves out. The ghost mining town was alive again, not as it was in its silver rush glory days, but in a new, thoughtful, and sustainable way, a living testament to